You were
David, I
going to
think one
jump
of
in
the
there.
things you do, yeah, I think one of the things you do really well as a UX strategist and website, someone that does leads website strategy, is you're very business focused. Where I think that gets lost a lot of time. Like you're very anchored on what do you want to achieve as a business, and that's anchor on like a couple of metrics to make sure that like the changes we're making are getting you closer to higher conversions, more revenue, like very things that are very tangible to the company's bottom line. So let me ask you this: do you typically have a handful of metrics that you anchor on, like that you really watch closely to see how a redesign or a website is performing?
Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that everybody should be looking at. The first is exit and bounce rate. So we want those numbers to go down. Let's say your website is an 80% bounce. Well, we're going to think, okay, well, what can we do to make them take an action before they leave, right? So we might say, okay, well, let's implement an exit intent pop-up, and let's try to give them a very valuable offer in that exit intent pop-up to reduce the number of bounces, right? So each metric that we're trying to improve is usually tied to some sort of strategy, right? If we're thinking, okay, we want to improve conversion rates, it's like, all right, well, what opt-in points do we have on the article, right? I do a lot of B2B websites. I do a lot of marketing websites. So a lot of what I focus on is what's getting them traffic, which is ultimately like the blog pages, right? PPC companies is different. Those are paid landing pages. For people who are worried about SEO, they're really worried about improving like their blog posts and stuff, right? So looking at that and saying, okay, well, is there an offer somewhere right below the fold? Is there an offer at the end of the article? Is there an exit intent that's showing it to them in case they didn't opt in? You know what I mean? Like, we need to try to make it so that, yes, the experience is good, but at the same time, like, we're keeping those business objectives in mind and executing that on the website, right?
Excellent.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I have no idea if I answered your question. Sorry.
No, that is. I just bit with my question. Just like is there any metrics that you like to watch and anchor on? So I think bounce rate, exit rate's huge. Obviously,
Yeah,
click through rate on the primary CTA is huge, and then
right, conversion rate is
one that
like
I
the
always
most
love is
important.
conversion rate. Yeah, conversion rate is kind of the gold standard, and like, are you able? Because I think of conversion rate as did a user meet their goal, right? Like, if conversion to me is that a user had a frictionless experience and they were able to meet their goal or find the details that they needed in order to convert.
And there's two
Cool.
more
So
that
we're
are kind of
we're
important.
running close on time, so I wanted to give Mustafa an opportunity to ask one more question, and I also wanted to quickly plug, everything we're talking about today. David was gracious enough to show us his UX audit. You can find that on uxhacks.com, and he also has a YouTube channel, David Martin UX Hacks. So check that out. He does a live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern. So highly recommend checking that out if you kind of hit on any thing of interest today, whether you're a website or you're a designer aspiring to have a similar company or skill set as David. So yeah, and then Mustafa, why don't you bring us home with one more question or topic that you wanted to touch on?
David was about to ask. He said there was two more things, and almost like it was like the butterfly that was getting away. Come on, David. What are they? Quick. What are those two more things that you like to check for?
Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No,
Sorry, David.
all good.
That's right.
The two other ones that are really important, time on page. People always forget about that stuff, and it doesn't always change in the way that you think it's going to. So, for example, we had an e-commerce client that we did the CRO stuff for, and they had a very compact kind of product page for their product with a very high time on page, 5 to 7 minutes. Their average time on page is 1 minute, even on their homepage. So people are sitting on this page and they're really thinking, because there's not a lot of content, so they're thinking about whether or not they want to make the purchase. Just by looking at that metric and looking at exits, bounces, and the conversion rate, we were able to surmise, right, or hypothesize that the best thing to do is actually increase the length of the landing page and give them more information. Because if they're spending 7 minutes, they're looking for something and it's not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so let's go and actually expand it. We added, a more interactive ingredients list, a better how it works section, frequently asked questions, more reviews, all that good stuff. Instead of having them hidden behind a bunch of tabs, we broke them out into like a long form landing page right? And we were able to figure that out because of the time on page being so long and the content on the page being so small, right? And then the second metric, which is not really a metric that you can measure out of the box with Google, but it's something that I set up on all my websites, is scroll depth. So what I'll do is either have Hotjar, which create heat maps, or if the client's like, we don't want Hotjar, I'll say, okay, that's fine. Are you on Google Analytics? If they say yeah, then we can go and create events based on scroll depth. So we'll have a 25% scroll depth, which is usually they got right below under the fold, a 50% scroll depth, a 75% scroll depth, and 100% scroll depth. And the reason I like to track that and look at those metrics is because it's going to tell me, are people actually reading the bottom of the page, or are they converting on the middle or the top? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That way I get to look at the conversion rate, and I get to look at like the page depth, and I can kind of see, okay, well, most people don't pass the 50% point, which means that people are only converting on like that top half, which means everything on this bottom half is essentially useless. Let's consolidate the page, right? And scroll depth, it really complements, time on page and all the other metrics, if you're able to set it up properly.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Design Huddle. The opinions expressed are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of our employer.